At the break of dawn, the quiet of the village was shattered by Don Quixote's loud, unrestrained cries. Fully awake, he sprang from his bed, shouting at invisible knights, "Hear, hear, valiant knights! Put forth the might of your arms, for the court's knights are gaining mastery in the tourney." His voice echoed through the halls, startling the curate, the barber, and nearby neighbors. Books still awaiting judgment went unseen, their fates lost to chaos. Don Quixote swung his arms wide, imagining an entire battlefield, with enemies pressing on every side. Despite fatigue, his eyes burned with determination. Those who witnessed him could only marvel at the energy of his delusions. He seemed possessed by the spirit of the 12 peers, acting alone against an unseen host. Dust floated in the air from his frantic movements, and morning light highlighted every tilt of his helmet and sway of his battered armor. The curate and barber, torn between concern and fascination, prepared to intervene. Even in sleep's absence, Don Quixote's imagination transformed a quiet room into a stage of heroic deeds, proving that reality could never contain the vision of a true knight-errant. Gently but firmly, the curate and barber restrained Don Quixote. He struggled briefly, but the calm hands and soft voices gradually quelled his frenzy. He sank back into bed, still flushed from imagined battles. He lamented the shame suffered by the 12 peers at the hands of the court knights. The curate offered measured counsel, advising rest to recover from fatigue. Don Quixote insisted he had been struck by Don Roland with the trunk of an oak tree, citing envy as motive. Yet his mind remained resolute, focused on vengeance and future triumphs. He demanded nourishment, believing strength would be restored by food, and obediently they brought him provisions. Exhausted by his own imagination, Don Quixote finally fell asleep once more, leaving his companions in awe of the power of his delusions. Though seemingly calm now, his mind remained aflame with heroism, adventures, and knightly honor, each vision as vivid as reality itself. The room, strewn with scattered sheets and books, bore witness to the turmoil of a mind that straddled two worlds, the mundane and the marvelous. The house remained silent save for soft breaths of a dreaming, undeterred night. That night, the housekeeper carried out the burning of all remaining books. Every volume in the yard and the house itself was consumed by flames, sparking clouds of smoke that twisted through the dark corridors. Some volumes, rich in knowledge and beauty, perished unjustly, sacrificed to cure Don Quixote of his obsession. The crackling fire lit up the night, sending sparks dancing into the moonlit sky. Shadows of leather-bound tomes flickered against walls as the housekeeper heaved book after book into the blaze. Embers floated upward, glowing like tiny stars, leaving behind only ashes where literary treasures had rested. The curate and barber, though regretful, understood the necessity. The source of Don Quixote's mania had been eliminated. To prevent recurrence, they walled up the library door with bricks and plaster, sealing off the vanished chamber entirely. 2 days later, Don Quixote arose and sought his books, confounded by the smooth wall. The housekeeper's story of a magician whisking the room away only heightened his determination, cementing his belief in unseen sorcery and the machinations of mystical enemies. Even in absence, the books lingered in imagination, their memory fueling the knight's unwavering commitment to adventure. Confounded by the disappearance of his books, Don Quixote demanded explanations. The housekeeper claimed a magician, the sage Munyaton, riding a serpent, had carried them off out of personal spite. His niece elaborated, telling of smoke, magic, and enchantments left in their wake. Don Quixote immediately recognized the enchanter's threat, believing him a powerful adversary determined to impede his fated triumphs. Resolute, he declared that no magic could prevent heaven's decree. The niece cautioned him, advocating peace within the home. Yet he insisted on vigilance and preparedness to avenge any challenge to his honor. His eyes sparkled with imagined knowledge, as if he could see through the layers of reality to the mystical forces at work. This belief in a magical foe transformed the ordinary household into a realm of adventure. Don Quixote's imagination bridged the real and the fantastical, blending smoke, shadows, and memory into tangible peril. The story of Muñatón, half believed, half feared, symbolized the enduring tension between mundane life and the heroic ideals that animated him. Even silence in the house seemed charged with expectancy, as though the magician might appear at any moment to test the knight's valor. For 15 days, Don Quixote remained quietly at home, outwardly calm but inwardly consumed with contemplation. He held spirited discussions with the curate and barber, defending the necessity of knights-errant and justifying his impending adventures. At times he appeared rational, at others he defended flights of imagination with conviction. Meanwhile, he sought to recruit a squire. His persuasive oratory and detailed visions of conquest convinced a neighboring farm laborer, Sancho Panza, to join him. Sancho left his wife and children, entranced by the promise of islands, riches, and governorship. Don Quixote's eloquence, laced with heroic narrative and subtle flattery, ensured Sancho's loyalty. They planned their departure carefully under the cover of night to avoid detection. The preparations, though modest, were suffused with anticipation. Don Quixote's heart swelled with pride at the prospect of new adventures, while Sancho, filled with hope and curiosity, imagined himself ruling distant islands. Together, the knight and squire represented a blend of audacious imagination and naive ambition. Their path forward would take them beyond familiar fields into a world where danger, glory, and fantasy intertwined, each step a bridge between the mundane and the heroic. Don Quixote busied himself with preparations for the journey. He sold some belongings, pawned others, and made hasty bargains, gathering enough money for provisions and necessities. He repaired his battered helmet as best he could, and secured a borrowed buckler from a friend. Sancho Panza was advised to bring alforjas and provisions for the road. Don Quixote hesitated over Sancho's mount, unsure if an esquire should ride a humble ass. Yet he resolved that an opportunity might arise to provide a grander steed should they encounter a discourteous knight. Each item packed carried the promise of adventure, shirts, provisions, and a few treasured objects. As dawn approached, they departed quietly, unseen by the village, traversing fields bathed in the oblique rays of morning light. Sancho rode proudly, imagining himself soon to govern the island promised by his master, while Don Quixote's heart swelled with purpose, recalling the heroic deeds he was destined to perform. Each step, though humble in reality, became monumental in his mind, transforming the quiet Spanish landscape into a stage for chivalric exploits. Their journey began with anticipation, courage, and the unshakable belief that fate itself would reward valor and loyalty in unexpected ways. Following the same route as Don Quixote's first journey, they crossed the rolling terrain of the Campo de Montiel. The early sunlight cast soft oblique rays, making the heat bearable and the fields appear golden and serene. Birds flitted in the distance, and the wind rustled the olive trees and wild grasses. Don Quixote strode proudly, imagining enemies lurking behind every hill and the distant cry of battle calling him to glory. Sancho Panza, alert yet grounded in reality, kept close to his master, balancing on his ass while dreaming of future governance. Each hill, each winding path became a stage for imagined feats of arms. Don Quixote spoke constantly of past knights' victories, weaving lessons into tales of courage, skill, and honor. Though modest in the eyes of the ordinary, this landscape blossomed into a field of epic adventures through the lens of his mind. Together, the pair moved as if a single entity, one the visionary, the other the willing disciple. The fields of Montiel, timeless and expansive, offered both challenge and inspiration, promising that any knight with courage and imagination could turn reality into legend. Sancho Panza frequently reminded his master of the Promised Island, his imagination fueled by visions of wealth and status. He pictured himself crowned king, his wife Juana Gutierrez elevated to queen, and his children adorned with noble titles. Don Quixote reassured him that this was in keeping with the traditions of old knights, who sometimes granted governance to loyal squires. Yet, he added, fortunes could appear suddenly, and perhaps Sancho might find himself ruling a kingdom within 6 days. Sancho's hopes expanded, his excitement mingling with skepticism. He worried about the practicality of Juana Gutierrez as a queen, while Don Quixote, ever the visionary, promised divine providence would settle all matters suitably. The dialogue between master and squire reflected the balance of dream and reality, one grounded yet greedy for reward, the other imagining chivalric perfection. The Spanish countryside stretched around them, indifferent to their plans but serving as the canvas for their hopes. In the back-and-forth conversation, Sancho's loyalty grew, anchored in ambition and affection, while Don Quixote's leadership shone in storytelling, instruction, and the promise of unparalleled adventure. The journey became not just a physical passage, but a symbolic preparation for future honor. Under the cover of night, the pair set out secretly, slipping from the village with silent footsteps. The sky was dotted with stars, and a cool wind brushed across the plains, carrying whispers of adventure. Don Quixote led confidently, his armor glinting faintly under moonlight, while Sancho Panza struggled to keep pace, burdened with alforjas and dreams alike. The moon cast elongated shadows across their path, giving even modest fences and trees a sense of drama. Every creak and rustle became a potential foe in Don Quixote's imagination, adding urgency to their progress. Despite the darkness, their spirits remained high. Anticipation made the journey seem swifter than reality. Sancho occasionally glanced at his master, awed by his unyielding bravery and the certainty of his cause. Each step carried the dual weight of expectation and uncertainty, with the promise of heroic deeds lying just beyond the horizon. The night itself seemed a participant in the adventure, cloaking them in secrecy, while the landscape's stillness contrasted sharply with the fervor in Don Quixote's heart. Their journey into legend had begun, leaving behind the ordinary life of the village and stepping into the epic imagined by a true knight. As dawn approached, Don Quixote's imagination transformed the surrounding fields into theaters of epic battles. Hills became ramparts, trees turned into sentinels, and distant figures were enemies to challenge. He recounted the feats of past knights, intertwining lessons with fantasy, and urged Sancho to observe and learn. Every breeze carried whispers of valor, every sunbeam illuminated potential victory. Though the world remained ordinary, their perceptions shaped an extraordinary reality. Sancho Panza listened and participated, at once skeptical yet fully invested in his master's narrative. Their dialogue blended instruction with inspiration, preparing the squire for future responsibility, including the governance of promised islands. Don Quixote's heart beat with anticipation. His eyes sparkled with the certainty that honor, adventure, and glory awaited them. Even mundane objects, rocks, fences, stray animals, were recast as elements of challenge or opportunity. Their journey, though physical, mirrored the mental odyssey of heroism, courage, and loyalty. Together they advanced, guided by vision and promise, bridging imagination and reality with each step, every heartbeat imbued with chivalric purpose. The Spanish plains became both classroom and battlefield, preparing knight and squire alike for trials yet unseen. By mid-morning, the journey gained momentum. Don Quixote and Sancho Panza moved steadily across the landscape, their silhouettes merging with the distant hills. Each mile brought new possibilities for adventure, danger, and fortune. The knight's imagination imbued the ordinary world with extraordinary significance. Every farm, stream, and hillock became a potential scene of valor or intrigue. Sancho, meanwhile, balanced hope and practicality, ensuring provisions were secure and his master's directives followed. Their dialogue wove the tapestry of chivalric vision, with Don Quixote narrating heroic deeds and Sancho imagining himself elevated to power and responsibility. Birds took flight at their passing, and the wind carried the scent of distant forests and pastures. The land was alive with potential, a fitting stage for the commencement of their exploits. Each hoofbeat and step carried symbolic weight: a knight's honor, a squire's ambition, and the promise of fabled adventure. The journey into the world of knights-errant had truly begun, leaving behind the ordinary village for landscapes where courage, loyalty, and imagination governed every horizon. The sun climbed higher, illuminating both the path ahead and the limitless potential of the stories they would live and tell.